Thanks for joining me again on In Conversation. I just had the pleasure of interviewing Jamie Metzl. Jamie is a noted author. He's written a number of books, and he's an expert on genetics, biotechnology, and AI. His book, Superconvergence, explores the confluence of these various forces that are so dominant in our society today and increasingly important. And it's a phenomenal read. I read it. I recommend you read it. JB's worked in government. He's worked in the private sector. He has, as I said, written a number of books. He's an incredibly interesting individual and a self-taught scientific expert and leader. And I guarantee you, in this crazy, noisy, complicated world where people are tossing around these terms all day, he's someone who's going to help you make sense of what's going on out there and understand these things. And thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you enjoy the conversation.
We stand today
a date which will live in infamy.
I have a dream.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Jamie, thank you so much for joining us on In Conversation. I'm thrilled to be able to talk with you about your background and Superconvergence, which I read on the beach over the holidays. So kept me very interested and entertained. It's a phenomenal read about the collision of some really powerful forces working their way through society. So I really appreciate you being on to break it down for our listeners.
Well, thank you so much, Howard. It's really my pleasure. I'm thrilled that you read the book on the beach because people ask me what the book is about, and then they say, well, geez, that sounds really heavy. And I say, no, I'm also a novelist. I've written this as a beach read. And they look at me a little bit suspiciously. So that there's an actual person who technically and physically read it on the beach.
Literally on the beach, I proved your point.
Yeah.
So let's start here. One of the things that jumped out at me in the book about you is that you're a self-taught scientist of sorts. You make that point in the book. How do you teach yourself science, and how did that shape you?
It's a great question, Howard, because everything is about curiosity. The world of science and technology are changing so rapidly and so dramatically that even the world's greatest experts, really in any field, 5 years, 10 years, let alone 30 years after their education, can't really rely on the specifics that they've learned, but they have to rely on structured ways of thinking and learning and processing. And so for me, everything is about curiosity, and it's about trying to understand each principle in order to move on to the next principle. For my last book, Hacking Darwin, I was invited by the director of the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory to go to speak to their 300 top scientists about the future of biology. And I said to them, it's really my honor to come and speak to you. But if you hear something that sounds wrong, please raise your hand and let me know, because I'm entirely self-taught. And the last biology course I took was in 11th grade of high school in Kansas City. Of course, I wouldn't say that if I didn't have a lot of confidence, but I think it's a strength and a weakness. I mean, there are certainly people who are the world's biggest expert on one really focused, narrow thing, and we need those kinds of people. And where I try to be, and I guess pride myself, is in my ability to really go broad and deep and to say, what are all of the connections between all of these different pieces? I mean, it's the title of the book, Superconvergence. It makes that essential point. But it's not like biology is different from chemistry, is different from physics, is different from quantum or computer science or AI. It's all part of this collective of technology and technological innovation. And that's the big story of this time. And that's what I'm trying to understand and to help other people understand and prepare for.
Yeah. One thing I kept thinking about as I read the book is institutions and the kind of anti-institutionalism running through through society these days, and not just the US, but globally. And the fact that you came to science outside the four corners of traditional structure just struck me as meaningful.
Yeah.
In the times we're living in.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, and it's another one of my essential points in all of my work is something really significant is happening to us. And it's not just about science or technology or government. It's about civilization. And our civilization has had these big quantum moments. I mean, for many, many millions of years when we became multicellular life, when mammals emerged after the asteroid wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs, when we stood up, when we controlled fire about 1 million years ago, when we developed agriculture, there are all these kinds of things. And we are at one of those quantum leap moments. And it's hard to experience. If you were the first person to cultivate a little weed or a little plant that was wild, so you didn't have to go and gather it, but you could just grow it next to your little hut somewhere, you didn't feel like you were some kind of revolutionary overthrowing the organization of the entire planet. It was like, yeah, this is good. I'll get a few extra berries than I got yesterday. But when those things accumulate, and now those little equivalent of those little plants and berries are accumulating very rapidly, they can have transformational implications. And this is one of those moments.
Yeah. And that was one of the things that jumped out at me about the book, was trying to conceptualize where we are and the future. And you're a quote unquote futurist, and I'd love to explore what that really means. But it resonated with me, looking at the present and the future in light of the past, and trying to conceptualize the moment in light of the fact that we've been bioengineering crops, as you pointed out, for millennia.
Yep.
The corn example I thought was really interesting, that it started out being a plant with 10 kernels in the pot or whatever, and was bioengineered. And I was trying to figure out how much of what we're dealing with now is actually revolutionary, or is it just a continuation of the continuum we've always been on?
Right. The answer is both. It's not a revolution because our entire lives are revolutionary. If you had just gone back, whatever, 1 million years or 100 million years, and you'd said one species in that ecosystem that you would have observed is going to be so completely dominant that they're killing 90 billion other animals per year. They're geoengineering the environment. They're completely changing the face of the planet. It just wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense. And our entire lives are revolutions. And yet we internalize the way that we grew up as this is from time immemorial. I mean, I always laugh at people, and I don't laugh in their face, but just behind their backs, at people who are going to Whole Foods and say, I only do sustainable organic fruits and vegetables, because everything that you would buy at Whole Foods in fruits and vegetables, and even most of the milks and meats, are genetically, biologically engineered in one way or another. Maybe not the swordfish steaks and a couple of other things. And yet we have this sense, oh, I like this natural life. I like nature because I like going hiking in Yosemite. But if Yosemite was full of all these predators, if our ancestors hadn't murdered all of these predators, you wouldn't like going hiking in Yosemite because you might think of yourself as a prey animal. And so we just kind of get used to the world that we know. So it's a continuation, but the speed and scale of what's happening now is just unbelievable. If you map out some of the revolutions just on a very simple time frame, the ones that I've mentioned so far, there's just pretty big gaps. I mean, there's almost 1 million years between controlling fire and the beginning of agriculture. And between the beginning of agriculture and the beginning of industrialization is about 10,000 years. But the gap between these massively transformative revolutions is just getting shorter and shorter. And the reason for that is that innovation inspires and begets more innovation. The more people, the more education, the more capabilities, the more knowledge, the more you just compound all of those things. And that's why we're seeing these transformations. And just imagine if you had gone from controlling fire to the first space mission all in over the course of 10 years, like that would have kind of blown your mind. And that's the experience that we're having now.
Yeah. So can we drill down on AI for a minute? Because it feels like, there are 10 news stories a day about how humans are about to become irrelevant and AI is going to rule the world. And
I hate those because I spend a
yeah,
lot of my life. I am a humanist. I mean, these capabilities are incredible, but I am a humanist, and I don't want to, you know, I this is a revolution built on many people who are neurodivergent. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just like I've spent a lot of time with some of the top people in Silicon Valley, and they don't, Howard, have the kind of the gift of the gab like you and I. We've made our live by our wits and razzle dazzle and charming a few people here and there. Like these guys are really focused programmers, and I
yeah,
think when they were young kids, they probably spent a lot of time in their rooms alone. And so this thing that human intelligence can be condensed into this amazing thing that is happening in our AI systems is just preposterous. There was a wonderful book actually that came out a couple of years ago called An Immense World by Ed Yong. And in the book, he goes through all these different kinds of animals and explains how they're sensing the world. And all these animals, you have it kind of like you're smelling on the bottom of your feet and noses everywhere. And it's this distributed intelligence, which is what we are, and it's how we process things. And just this condensation of knowledge embedded in language, as critically important as that's just a little piece of what it means to be a human. And so these people who are saying we're on the verge of artificial general human intelligence where machines can do everything that humans can do, it is ludicrous and preposterous. And to get there, you have to have such a narrow vision of what a human is. But having said that, it's going to change a whole lot of things. Just connected to your earlier point, just like industrialization changed a whole lot of things, and electrification and computers and all these kinds of things. And it's going to do it very quickly. So I hate it when people say humans are going to become irrelevant. No chance of that in my view. Humans are not the new Neanderthals. No chance of that in my view. But a whole lot of things are going to change in very profound ways. And we need to start laying the foundation for that. And we need to start investing in making sure that this has an optimal outcome, because the future is not set. All of these amazing technologies could lead us to a terrible outcome or a wonderful outcome. And the difference is us. And that's why I've written the book. That's why I'm happy to be speaking with you, Howard, because we now is the time when we need to say, well, what are our values? What are our guiding principles? And how do we weave those in to this process of building the kind of future we'd like to inhabit?
and humans are inherently innovative is the point that I took away.
For sure. And most of us are doing jobs that are not so long ago ancestors just wouldn't have recognized as gainful employment. Like if you had tried to speak with your hunter-gatherer ancestors or even your farmer ancestors, not like all of us, not that long ago, and say, well, what do you do? It's like, oh, I sit in a room and I sit in front of a little computer and I have thoughts, and they would have said, like, all right, are you hunting, gathering? Like, how are you
Right.
using that to get food? And so we just so many of our jobs are new things that humans have created. Like we create law and our lives get more complicated. And then we need a whole class of people to help navigate these laws. And then we distribute money to those people and they have to go to the office. So they need nannies to go and take care of their kids. It's like humans we create stuff to do, and that stuff gives us meaning. And the possibility to do those things is really unlimited, but we have to make sure we have a framework to allow that. And if we live in a winner take all environment, even though that this is a societal project and everything about this is civilizational and societal, including all of the training data, then our societies will ultimately collapse, and the small number of people who control the commanding heights will get everything, and everybody else will be in big trouble.
How do you tell when something is truly revolutionary as opposed to evolutionary, I guess?
Yeah, it's a really hard question, and sometimes I even talk about r/evolution of just merging those two things. And it's just a question of speed, scale, and scope, and it's a judgment call. And as I said before, with superconvergence, because all of our technologies and innovation and science is all connected, when you take out the pieces and you say, well, AI is revolutionary, but quantum is evolutionary, and we'll see what happens, that makes less sense. And so what I say is just it's the whole thing of technological and scientific innovation and acceleration, because it's all interconnected. But certainly with AI, I mean, just opposite of what I've just said, I mean, most consumers, starting in November of 2022, all of a sudden had a whole new entity that has become a pretty big part of our lives. And that experience is going to become much deeper and much more intimate. I actually have my next book is coming out in April of 26 this year, and it's called The AI 10 Commandments, A New Moral Code for Humanity. And in it, I described my process of working with GPT-5 to come up with, frankly, a much better set of 10 commandments than the ones that Moses purportedly received on the top of Mount Sinai, based on the training set of all of human history and all of our religious and spiritual traditions. And so it's just like, it feels pretty revolutionary to have this kind of partner that's doing a whole lot of things. And I think we all feel good when there are mistakes, but the mistakes are getting less, the machines are getting smarter, and we're going to co-evolve with these technologies, as we've done for at least a million years with other technologies.
Yeah, one thing that struck me is that there's, and this comes up a lot in the genetic context, where you talk about the ability to detect various genetic problems. The ability to diagnose may outpace the ability to treat in a way.
Yep.
And the kind of an ethical dilemma. Like, do you want to know you have a problem if you don't have a solution to the problem? There are all sorts of things like that it feels like we're going to wrestle with.
Yeah, we'll have to wrestle with all of these things. And that's the whole point, is that these are very difficult, very challenging. There are costs and benefits of really every step that we take. And so we need to have a structured process and an inclusive process for figuring out what are the best ways forward on that health information. I certainly personally am of the view that I want all data. Like, I want all relevant data, but that requires us as consumers to say, well, maybe I'm going to have some kind of nascent cancer diagnosis, and the right thing to do is nothing. And so we have to have a whole lot of education, because we can just see things more. I mean, right now there's this whole debate where people are saying, why is autism increasing so much? And the reason autism is increasing so much is just that our diagnostics have gotten better and our definitions have expanded. And so the more that we can see into humans, the more that we're going to recognize that mutation is the essence of biology. Everybody has, many, many tens or hundreds of pre-existing conditions for things that, if they are fully realized, will kill you, including just living is one of those things. Aging is one of those things. And so as we get more information, we're going to have to recognize that we just live in a world of probabilities, and the kinds of certainties that we've had in the past that have in many cases just been based on our not knowing maybe some people will still want to do that. And I've met many people who say, I just don't want to have the information, and that's perfectly fine. But I just think that for me, the future of healthcare, as I write about in the book, is moving from generalized to personalized and precision. And the next step is predictive and preventive. And so to be part of that, we are individually and collectively going to need to have a lot of data in our data sets to do the kind of analytics that will allow us to say, well, geez, I'm at a 50% greater than average risk of X, early stage dementia or something like that. And here are the things that I can do now to try to push that back. And whether it's benign things like diet and exercise or meditation, or there are a lot of things that we can do. And so I'm a big believer in information, but you're absolutely right. These are very complicated issues.
So I saw you're an Ironman triathlete and marathoner. Are you?
Yep.
How many wearables do you have on, and are you constantly monitoring yourself?
It's a great question. And my answer is zero, none. I love running. I've done 60 marathons and 40 ultra marathons and 13 Ironmans. And I never wear wearables because I'm just out there enjoying myself. I love running. When I hit my stride running, I can just feel it. And so, like for me, it's like my view is data isn't like we should think of, well, what is the data that we want, and why do we want it, and what are we trying to achieve? So for me, when I'm out exercising, it's just because I love doing it. And when I'm running the marathon, as long as I beat my brother Jordan, it's a great day. So
There you go. Look out,
and I can
Jordan.
measure that without any wearables.
And well, while we're on that, how do you do 13 Ironmans or whatever it is you said, and all the ultra marathon? How do you find time to write all these books?
Well, this isn't going to endear me to your listeners, Howard. But let me put it this way: when I talk to my friends and see my friends who have one kid, two kids, three kids, I'm in awe, because I think, like, how could you have X number of kids and feed them consistently and be a good parent and make sure they're clothed and fed and non-feral and going to school and do anything else in life? And so for me, I just feel like, not having kids, mostly because I'm so young. I have I have a lot of free time. And so, I wake up very, very early, and I'm extremely efficient. And like this morning, I was up at it at 4:30 in the morning, and I'm usually up very, very early. But if I throw three kids in the mix, I wouldn't be running. I probably
Fair
wouldn't be
enough.
running any marathon. I'd be writing haikus and trying
There
to
you go.
read them to people on the subway.
Well, it's incredibly well researched and well written.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
there was yet another thing that leapt off the page literally was just, how do you find the time to do this? And another thing that struck me about the book, I think the last chapter got got more into the political dimension.
Right.
But what I kept thinking about as I read the book was how apolitically you were, and I mean this as a
Yeah.
huge compliment, how apolitically you were approaching subjects that are politicized every single day. Like, you were, one basis for the book is that climate change exists, obviously,
Yeah.
and that it's partially human induced, but you didn't tackle that. It didn't feel to me like you were coming at that from a Republican versus Democratic, from a partisan political perspective. And I just wonder if there are takeaways. Obviously, we were introduced by my friend and partner, Stuart Shorenstein, who's a good friend of yours. And Stuart and I are in this business that revolves around politics and navigates a lot of partisanship. And I felt like there were really good lessons to be gained from tackling really complicated subjects in a really non-political manner. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so my view is we should all not be tribal and we should just look at the facts and to the best of our abilities and based on our values, whatever they are, try to say, well, what feels like the right answer? I mean, I happen to be a center left liberal Democrat, but there are tons of issues where I have worked very collaboratively with Republicans, and certainly on issues of genetically modified crops and whether it's traditional transgenic GMO crops or now using new tools like CRISPR genome editing to manipulate the genes within crops and seeds, or issues like COVID-19 origins, where early in 2020, I was speaking very publicly about the possibility that the COVID-19 came from a research-related accident in Wuhan, which was a heretical view among my liberal
Yeah,
friends and Democratic
absolutely.
friends at that time. And so that's my view has always been that tribalism is such a threat to thinking people, and it's a threat to societies, and that everybody it's healthy and normal that we have different values, but then when we should look at whatever it is and say, well, based on the available data, what's the what feels right to me? And for me, that has made me land in different places. And why? So certainly in Washington, I've worked very closely with the Republican senators, people like Senator Roger Marshall from Kansas. I've worked with Democrats. And I just wish, I mean, I'm like an old fashioned, some people would call it a dinosaur. But when I first started, I mean, years and years ago, almost 30 years ago now, actually, when I was in the United States government, I worked in the White House for President Clinton on the National Security Council. I worked for Madeleine Albright in the State Department. And then I was deputy staff director of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee when Joe Biden was chairman and my friend Tony Blinken was staff director. But in those days, our closest collaborators were the Republicans, even when it was conservative Republicans like Jesse Helms, who were starting to use holding confirmations as kind of aggressive tactics. At core, we really worked together. And I just feel like not just in the United States, but in the world, we just need to find ways of working together toward common interests. And sometimes that common interest means fighting bad things. And that's okay. But I just feel like our country and our world have become so dangerously tribal
Yeah.
that I feel like it often pushes us towards self-destructive and wrong answers.
Yeah. You make the point that we all own a piece of figuring out what the right way is to navigate this
Yep.
super convergence of these powerful forces, and the need for diversity and equity in arriving at those judgments. And
Yep.
the way I read those points was not, it's not that you were making an argument for DEI in the sense of
Right.
the way it's politicized, but a diversity of points of view, and including points of view of people on the, different sides of the aisle, basically different life experiences.
Yeah, it's so essential. I mean, I am also a critic of capital D, capital E, capital I because of what it's become. But I'm a huge fan, more than a fan, of lowercase DEI
Yeah.
because those words really represent something meaningful. When people talk about diversity, it's like, well, yeah, yes, our universities should look like our populations and our workplaces should. But diversity is something much deeper. It's not like some kind of nice to have. In Darwinian terms, diversity is the random mutation that is the foundation of evolution. It's random mutation and natural selection is the Darwinian formula. And so if we don't have diversity of approaches, diversity of capabilities. I was talking about the neurodivergent people who created all these incredible technologies that we're using right now. If we don't have that diversity, it's really a risk. This isn't like some nice to have bonus thing. And so that's diversity, equity. It's just if we are not getting the best of our entire population, we're just throwing away potential. And every kid in this entire world who's getting a crappy education is not just bad for them, it's bad for us. We're taxing ourselves by not having access to the brain power of everybody and the contributions of everybody. And inclusion, again, lowercase I, is the process of bringing everybody together and say, hey, what do you have to contribute? And let's benefit from that. And so that's why, all these people look at these kids in Central African Republic and all these places where Yemen, where things are falling apart. It's not just, oh, poor kids, it's poor us, because every one of those kids could be the one who invents some kind of great technology or finds some cure for what previously seemed an incurable disease. So it's the hope and the frustration. The hope is that we can use these technologies to help humans be better humans, more connected, better educated, better able to flourish. But the danger is if we can also use them poorly and exacerbate some of the problems that we now have.
And I think you were saying that we don't have a choice on some level because we're running out of resources that we need to have in order to exist as a society. We have too many people, too much in the way of need for human consumption to be supported by, for example, the land and the water that exists on planet Earth today. And we need, partially because of climate change, partially just because of those are finite resources.
Yep.
We need different solutions.
Yeah. So, I feel like we do have a choice because self-destruction is always a choice. And we have lots of societies that have made the choice to self-destruct. But the wisest choice is to say, well, what are the things that we want? And that's why in the book I say the path towards telling people to not want the things that they want, to tell everybody, you have to become a vegan. Like they just hasn't worked. People want these animal products, and it's our culture. We've consumed animal products for a very, very long time. And so the question is, one thing is to say, why everybody become a vegetarian. And frankly, if everyone became a vegetarian, our world would be a whole lot better in a whole lot of different ways. But it's just not going to happen. Even in our societies where vegetarian awareness is growing, we're still every year consuming more and more animal products. So in my view, it's a better strategy to say, well, how can we get the things that we want just in a different way? How can we use cellular agriculture to grow animal products in industrial bioreactors that are biologically identical to the milks and meats that we want? These aren't synthetic products like soy milk and almond milk. It's actual cow milk. It's actual cow meat. It's biologically identical. But we don't have to murder 90 plus billion land animals to get it. We don't have to. 3/4 of all of our agriculture supports animal agriculture in one way or another. So that's a huge part of the land mass of the earth. If we just said, all right, we want to have these animal products and we're going to figure out, we already know how to make them using cellular agriculture. We're going to figure out how to scale them at these mega scales. The positive externalities could really be transformative in so many wonderful ways. So that's what the technology creates the opportunity, but it's really values and imagination are what allow us to seize that opportunity to build a better world.
Yeah. I kept feeling badly when I went to eat a steak or a piece of fish as I was reading the book, but I read that, you love brisket and you're the son of a butcher, I think. So it made me feel a little bit better.
Well, I don't know if you saw that footnote in the book, but you mentioned your colleague and I would call him a close friend, but that's not enough. Really, Stuart Shorenstein is really, I see him as just as a member of my family. And in the book, when I'm talking about that we can grow animal products and meats using cellular agriculture, I say I'm not a vegetarian. I love brisket, and the very best brisket on planet Earth is cooked by Janice Shorenstein Weinman, who is Stuart's wife and also a member of my chosen family. And it's just it's objectively true. This isn't just I happen to know Stuart and Janice. I've eaten a whole lot of brisket in a whole lot of countries in a whole lot of places. Janice Shorenstein Weinman's brisket is objectively the best brisket in the world until proven otherwise.
I need to get some of that then, because I love it.
Yeah.
So you talk about the need for governance to ensure that we do this all the right way, that we handle this convergence of these powerful forces in the right way. I think it's unclear exactly, and I don't think you propose a particular solution for governance. It's something we need to work on and figure out. How do we do that in a world where there's tribalism, in a world where people have this anti-institutional bias? How do we get people to buy into governance around these issues?
It's a really hard question. I mean, in the aftermath of after the pandemic started, I mentioned that I was involved in the COVID origins issue, but I also created a global interdependence movement called One Shared World. And the thinking was, well, everybody is going to understand that our fates are interconnected in our interdependent world. And so we're going to have to solve these problems together. And we had some momentum, and now it's all kind of fizzled out because our world has become so tribalized. So governance is the right answer. We know it's the right answer. It involves not just what governments do, what we all do at every level. We know that if we don't have some kinds of systems for governance, regulation, accountability, if we don't put up guardrails, this wonderful opportunity could end up in a really, really bad and dangerous place. And so the question is, how can we get from here to there in a world that's dividing, a world where the United States has traditionally, for the last 8 decades, been a driver of trying to bring the world together in many ways to solve problems. And now we are taking the lead in moving in the opposite direction. And China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and others, they don't need our lead because that's the world that they are looking for. And so we're going to solve this problem one way or another. The most likely way, unfortunately, is if we don't do anything, if we don't find ways of coming together, there's going to be another crisis much worse than COVID. And whether it's a pandemic, a synthetic biology pandemic, or some kind of nuclear war, or some kind of ecosystem collapse, or it's guaranteed that if we don't integrate values and governance and accountability and best practices into our process of developing these technological superpowers, we will have some wonderful breakthroughs, and we'll have some terrible catastrophes. So that's, if we continue on the path that we're on, that's our most likely outcome. But there's a better path if we can find ways of coming together. And it's hard and it's difficult and it requires a lot of process and compromise. I do think that there are things that we can do, and it's not an all or nothing thing. I mean, there certainly are societies that are doing a pretty good job of creating governance and accountability systems for some of these technologies. I think with my last book, Hacking Darwin, was about assisted reproduction, and the United Kingdom has their Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority, which is terrific. France, other European countries, United Arab Emirates is thinking about innovations. Estonia, Finland, there are great examples out there of countries that are figuring things out. So as a start, we can say, well, talk about values, talk about national best practices, sharing national best practices. We're going to get there because we have to. But my goal is, and the reason why I wrote the book, is that if we want to get there better, and faster, everyone's going to have to realize that this is all of our responsibility.
Yeah, you talk about being interconnected and being interdependent, and that's really, really hard we are interconnected. COVID didn't have any borders, but we've got countries trying to limit, erect technological barriers.
Yep.
Which is, to me, a fool's errand. It's like, are we really going to prevent China from developing AI because we don't let NVIDIA, export its chips or whatever? Like, we've already shown that doesn't work. So it's almost like we have to come together as opposed to fighting one another, where the fighting really is of no relevance. That's the way it feels to me anyway.
Yeah. So objectively, you're right. But as I said before, my view is, I'm kind of, I talked to about myself before as a liberal, and I am a liberal internationalist, but I think that means we have to really fight for good stuff and fight against bad stuff. And so I personally support the CHIPS Act, and I personally support that, just given how destructive China has been in many ways in the international arena,
Sure.
that I would worry about empowering China the way that we, and particularly Europe, empowered Russia, and now we're regretting it. So that's the balance, and that's, for me. I'm certainly an idealist, but I think I wouldn't want to be Pollyannish about it. And you look at what's happening in Ukraine, where this AI race and autonomous killer robots race has huge implications for all sorts of things. So I think it does make sense that we should support the Ukrainians and oppose things that would empower the Russians. But that's why it's all so complicated. And that's why I certainly think that, looking back, depending on what happens, if somebody, whatever, X hundred years ago, is looking back at now, I think it's very likely that they would say, well, didn't they see how quickly their technologies were developing? Didn't they see that they were developing these superpowers with the ability to create life and destroy life at a scale that was previously unimaginable? And didn't they recognize that unless they came together as a species, the outcome would be terrible? But if they came together as a species, the outcome could be wonderful beyond their wildest dreams. And I think that's why I've written my AI 10 Commandments book.
Yeah.
Because it's really about values. And in that book, as I said, I collaborated with GPT-5, and we came up with some really great new 10 Commandments based on all of our traditions that brought everybody. And then there's a whole chapter saying, like, here's the principle and here's where it comes from. And it comes from whatever different indigenous traditions, or Islam, or Christianity, or Judaism, or whatever. And we have so much that unites us. And that's why it's tragic that we've experienced these last 80 or so years, starting with the UN Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and then the end of the Cold War. And there was this moment, and it was the moment when I actually was serving in the United States government, where there was a lot of hope. That was the end of history, that we can come together and do great things and live in that kind of Star Trek world that everybody would want. And now we're falling apart. But I don't think that it means coming together. Neither coming together nor falling apart are inevitable states of being.
Yeah.
Both are results of actions that we and all of us take when multiplied to scale.
I like the way you ended the book, about talking about the game of tag with your brothers.
Yeah.
We all own a piece of it, and you say to the reader, tag, you're it.
Yep.
But I also feel like leadership matters
hugely.
And we need leaders, and not a partisan comment, leaders writ large to step up. Whoever, we have no idea sitting here today who that's going to be, but we need people to step up and take these issues and and really lead and drive the change we need. And so it's about all of us owning a piece, but boy, do we need some leadership, across both sides of the aisle.
Yep, absolutely.
So let's end on this note. As a futurist, how do you feel about the future? I think you're going to tell me you're a net optimist, as I am. I hope you do anyway.
Yep.
But what's your take? Where are we headed? What's your take on on the future of this country, the future of the world? What are you thinking, kind of in broad strokes?
I'm net optimistic, and certainly in broad strokes. And it's like when you look at a graph and you look at it from a distance, like, oh, it's going up. But when you look at it up close, that up has a bunch of zigs and zags. And
Yeah.
I think that's the way it's going to be. I mean, I think we're going to use these capabilities and these opportunities to expand education, healthcare. I mean, the number of hundreds of millions, if not billions of people who are alive on planet Earth who don't have access to quality food, quality education, quality healthcare. And I think that we're going to be able to really help many, many people and bring them into this common process of growth and opportunity and progress and human flourishing. And there are real downside risks that are going to need to be managed. And so while I'm net optimistic, this future isn't going to build itself. And the way that we're going to get from here to there is for every single person to say, all right, what's my role in whatever little piece of this I have? Maybe it's my home.
Yeah.
Maybe it's my church or synagogue community. Maybe it's my work. Maybe it's in elected office, or really it could be anywhere. But what I tell people is you may have a feeling that somebody somewhere is handling this, and whether it's the US government or some other government or the EU or the UN or whatever, but I promise you, it's not happening the way that you're imagining at that level. And so to get there, what governance means is that we all recognize that we're stakeholders in building this future.
That's a great note to end on. We all own a piece of it, and what do we value, and putting that forward, and hopefully collectively we come to terms with some of these forces. And setbacks are okay. They're part of the process, but make net progress. And at any rate, phenomenal book, great read. I recommend reading it on a beach very much. Jamie Metzl, thank you for joining us on In Conversation. A fascinating conversation. We'll look forward to the next book. It's a complicated time, and you help make sense of it. So thanks so much for coming on and speaking with me.
Thank you, Howard. It's really been my pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's edition of the Beltway Briefing. If you enjoyed the conversation, the best way to support the podcast is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. For more information on Cozen O'Connor Public Strategies, visit our website at copublicstrategies.com and follow us on social media. Thanks again for listening.